You're listening to another amazing episode of Two Babies in a Business, a podcast where I get to connect with amazing women doing amazing things. I feel like sometimes we don't think we're that amazing, but we are. So I'm here to celebrate it. I get to catch up with a blast from my political past, a wonderful individual that I think is doing amazing things that I've considered a mentor in my life. She's definitely pushed me and challenged me as a young adult, and now as an adult, I still feel weird calling myself an adult some days. Patricia McLeod. Patty, welcome to Two Babies in a Business. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you're passionate about.
Oh, well, goodness. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity and the invitation to be part of your podcast. I'm absolutely delighted. I met you back in 2011. So 13 years ago, and you're a powerhouse and always impressed me with your confidence, but also your kindness. So it's a great honor to be part of your building your business and your journey in this small way. I am a lawyer by profession. I sometimes say I'm a recovering lawyer because I don't practice anymore. And every day I work to not practice. And what I have been able to transition my career into is full-time governance roles, both being on boards of directors, paid corporate roles, and chairing a number of boards. That was a conscious decision I made in my late 40s, which is not a typical time for people to be moving into full-time governance or significant governance roles. But I did so very mindfully because my thesis was that there was a place for full-time dedicated governance professionals. And I'm still building that. I don't think you ever hit a destination, at least in what I'm doing. There's no pinnacle role that you can say, oh, now I've done it, check. But that's what I've been doing for the last 7 years. And I'm happy to talk about that journey.
Yeah, I love it. We were talking before this about this kind of balance that I think, try to achieve as moms who work, but also just as professionals and, our personal lives. And you have this great balance comes from work that gives you energy. And I'm just struck by that. Dig into that a bit. What does that mean for you?
Well, I think for me, I have two daughters that are now 19 and 21, which is shocking. But, a lot of the decisions I had to make in my career as you go along are about not only balancing between, family and work, but making sure that your work is worthy of the time and leaves you with the energy to go back to your family. I did an executive MBA when my daughters were 4 and 6. I was working full time. We were building a house. My husband is in the practice of law as well and had his busiest billing year, I think, of his entire career that same year that I was doing an MBA. It really pushed, but the goal was to build energy, to get back and engaged and learning again after having practiced for 15 years and wanting to find a way to sort of reignite my passion. And interestingly enough, I don't know that MBA process necessarily changed my career, but what it really did was build in me sort of confidence and soft skills and leadership skills and different things that I wasn't necessarily getting in my day job that ended up leading to the pivot I made 6 years later. I think it led to some wisdom around that idea of energy. I was literally killing myself doing this MBA and working and raising a young family. And I had more energy than when I finished and just went back into work. And that it was looking at that and going, well, so it's not about how much time you're spending. It's about what you're getting out of the time you're spending.
Yeah.
That allows you and fuels you to do big things, to do great things, to take strides into something new. To me, was a big wake-up call. And then fundamentally, sort of the second big pivot I made was when I was sitting at my desk being paid to be a lawyer, doing governance work off the side of my desk as a volunteer in the community, and realizing that what I was doing for free was filling my bucket and giving me the energy to do what during the day was draining me. I'm not saying it's a bad career. I was in a good role in a good company making good money, and it wasn't what was actually filling my bucket. And taking a number of steps to try and turn it into a governance career, which is fairly unheard of, was more interesting and, again, more energizing to me. And I think that ties back into your family, because what you go home with at the end of the day is actually the quality of your time. I personally more subscribe to the theory that it's quality, not quantity. I mean, if you're a completely miserable, depleted mom, you might spend 24/7, but you're not as good as really engaged and living an interesting life and modeling for your children and focused on them and really engaging with them when you engage with them. So that's my justification maybe, but that's what I believed. And I know when my career was draining me, I wasn't going home and being that good mom either. So I think it's always about finding the ways that you're filling your bucket so that you're better in all areas. And I'm a better mom when I'm really engaged in my life.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I should have been taking notes. I'm in a reverse engineer. I feel
Sure.
like 100% the mom aspect of doing the stuff you love and being able to come to the table. Like I think about my boys now and the days where I'm grinding it out on something that, to your point, it's not like it's a bad job or
Mhm.
not something that I'm not good at or something that I know how to do. But there are just those days where it's not giving you the gratification or, in the work I do, that's mostly client facing on that marketing and communication side. You have some either bad conversations or with clients or
Sure.
misalignments, and now all of a sudden you're on the phone in the car ride home from school as opposed to engaging with your kids, or
That's
your
right.
mood is off, or you're sending 100 text messages to team members.
Yeah.
Whereas, I look at the days where I've been out, facilitating a media training session, which I know I love and fills my cup, and I come back and I'm, energized and
Mhm.
excited. Let's go to the playground or let's go on a walk, and you just feel lighter.
I think our time, this is not new quote, but it's our only real precious commodity.
Yeah.
And I think we all, particularly working moms, fight with this idea. You look back and those early years are so short, and did you do it right? Maybe because my girls are of an age where I'm starting to have those transitional conversations. They're not fully adult thinking about me like a person yet, but they're getting there. They're starting to get context for periods of time where they realize, like, oh, I just thought you were a grump, and oh, you were going through something. You realize that other side of the modeling and the role that you play for them,
Yeah.
and how that plays into your partnership with your spouse, just all those unspoken things that they're taking away and building a value perspective around. And again, that's not taking away from the stay-at-home parent, because that's also a job. That's a work as well. If it fulfills you and you're a better parent because of it, check. That's exactly what I would strive for. And then you eventually get to a place where your kids start to put perspective to the phases of their lives that aren't just in their centered world.
Right.
And you realize you did have some impact with how you approached your time with them.
Yeah, no, it is. I feel like that perspective too of having, a little kid now going, ooh, I wonder what they'll look back at as
Yeah.
core memories, right? Oh, the day
Yeah.
mom had to let someone
Yeah, you hope
go,
it's this
or
day, not that day.
right?
But fundamentally, you get to a place, we're all just doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And I'm trying, as we all do, to forgive the less than and say, on a balance of things, I don't believe in the balance of, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of home. I don't believe in the balance of perfect time. The other thing that has really become apparent to me is it's balance over the longer term. There are
Right.
times where your kids and your job might take more of your time and attention than your marriage or maybe your friendships or your family. There are other times where your family suddenly, through illness or through taking care of your parents, come in and something else is going to take it back. There are times you're building a business and that business becomes foundational to your family's sustainability. And so it has to be front and center. It's more trying to look at it through a longer term lens. And to me, I think that has helped me when there were times I had to double down. When I was making the transition from being general counsel to a corporate director, I actually double tracked it for about 4 years. I was working probably close to 80 hours a week. and trying to do community volunteerism as well in order to build profile and, find those
Right.
opportunities and those references. My kids got some pretty good billing, and my poor husband was some down at the bottom of the list. But now we're entering a different phase where my kids are going off to university, and you sort of realize, oh, now I've got lots more time. And there can be focus as long as you've maintained some good solid structure to it. But I think that, to me, when I think about balance, it's both, if something is draining you, it can be a half an hour a day. But if it
Yeah.
takes away your energy, it's not about the amount of time. It's a really, and into every job, a little bit of crap must fall. Like, it's no job is
Right.
perfect all the time,
Right.
as I'm trying to teach my kids right now in their part-time jobs, like we don't all get to walk out and, you know, rule the world. But on average, if you're really doing something that you can see, it fuels your passion and gives you intellectual challenge, and you get to express your curiosity, and if you want to be a leader, you get opportunities to lead, and if you like to be a doer and you get to do and feel good about it, that's really the goal, I think, with working.
Walk me through that transition, that light bulb moment from, okay, I know where I'm getting energy. I know where I need to shift the balance. Walk me through what that looked like. Say, I can't imagine that was an easy light bulb to realize because you were like in the thick of motherhood at that point.
Yeah, I think there was a few things that were happening with it. One was I was realizing it really was sort of my sense of how I was contributing with what I was doing every day was leaving me going home at the end of the night not the best
Right,
version of myself.
right,
So that awareness to go, I am not a patient mom. I am not, a loving spouse right now. I am just barely hanging on because of the stress of work and how I feel about myself. I think the second thing, particularly for what I did, because it was a bit more than a bit unknown. I mean, people know about corporate directorships. That's highly stereotypical, but I mean, I was trying to make this shift in around 2015. We've moved a fair ways in 9 years, but that was the job description: was you had to be a CEO, you had to be a man, you had to be a CEO in Calgary, you had to come from oil and gas. And, there was a few exceptions for some diversity perspectives, but that was kind of the job description. And I'm sitting there going, I'm 45. I think I'm pretty good at governance. I'm making some difference in the roles I have. But no, I'm not a CEO. I'm not retired. I don't have gray hair, and that might have a little help. But, I know I'm not carrying a lot of gravitas from having led a company for 20 years. I think I've got a place. Where am I on these lists? And that, just the idea of that and how to do that, and the work I did really in that transition was to go out and seek exactly what you're doing, except I didn't tape it, but seek perspectives from people
right.
who had made that transition, and women in particular who were sitting on boards, and what that looked like. And how did I build my board proposition, my board value proposition? And I think for the most part, what I got was a pretty good confirmation that I didn't fit the typical board profile.
Right.
And maybe for once in my life, because I was really enjoying the work and knew that I was adding value when I was on boards, I went, okay, but where am I? Where am I? Where am I? And I just kept applying, and I kept putting myself out there, and I kept, just persistence.
Yeah.
And I think that's the second thing, is just kind of being so audacious that you keep putting yourself out there. And then I got one, and then I got another one. None of them were, I'm not sitting on the board of the Bank of America. I'm not saying I've
Right.
landed the biggest. I've had some really significant roles in really significant organizations in Calgary and Alberta, and across Canada, that I have felt like I've made a pretty transformational difference too. And by 2017, I actually had been asked to chair one of the boards I was on. I'd been on it for a year, and we were going through a lot of strategic change. And the board came and asked me to put my hand. I had to make a choice.
Right.
And that is the real gulp moment, because it's easy to double track things. It's easy to overwork, but to actually make the choice to say, okay, I'm going to step off. I'm not going to be this general counsel defined. I'd been a lawyer for over 20 years.
Yeah.
It starts to define you. You can sort of say to people, what do you do? Oh, I'm a lawyer. And it's a nice, easy defined box. And you say, okay, now I'm going to go out and say I'm a corporate director. I would say 98% of the world doesn't know what that means based on their exposure to a board. Sometimes people look and go, really? Like, you know, again, not hitting all those stereotypical components of it. And so that big gulp moment for me was, well, and am I doing it too soon? Should I try and stay another 5 or 10 years in the corporate world? What risk am I taking? What if I fail? What if I'm bored? What if I'm wrong? I always really believe in seeking some advice and perspective. So I went to the CEO of the company I was then working for and asked his thoughts on it. And he just said, you've got lots of runway to be a lawyer and you're a good lawyer, but not everybody's handing out. This company was a $1.3 billion top line revenue with 4,000 employees. He said, that just doesn't come along every day. I needed someone to give me that sounding board that said, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Try something. And so that's kind of what I said was, okay, I'll give it 6 months between this portfolio boards and the chair role. That was August of 2017, and I've not gone back to law, and I don't think I would. It's one way or the other. I mean, board roles come and go. There's no severance package for them. They can disappear in a heartbeat based on, things that happen in companies. But I've done this now, and I enjoy the way you have to think. I enjoy the engagement with your colleagues on a board. I enjoy the strategic, even the crisis challenges through COVID was a very interesting time to be in governance, taking companies into new lines of business, selling off lines of business, changing executive teams. If it's easy, it's not coming to a board.
Yeah.
So it's really challenging work, and there's a lot of politics and personalities in it, and finding consensus through that has really challenged my brain. And I look back at that August 2017 conversation where he just said, you won't know unless you give it a go.
Great. Yeah, that
I mean, you
perspective.
stepped off the track in order to create your business.
Right.
You had to go out and build a business on your own. It's that same idea. Like, what's my off ramp? What can I do? And I was very fortunate I did. And the flip side is you can always go back. You can always pivot. There's one thing in life that truly, I think, fundamentally changes you forever, and that's becoming a parent.
Yeah.
Otherwise, honestly, you can try something, and if it doesn't work, you pivot. You've learned and you pivot.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like there's a huge perspective piece right in there. Like when you're in that mode of having to make a decision when it comes to your career, I'd be curious to talk to a man about this too, because I feel like there's maybe some baked in confidence, but I can't imagine too. It was easy going out and seeing, okay, standard kind of old male CEO was taking on these positions. I'm the new face. And to gain that perspective from a leader that you trusted.
Well, and I think for him, maybe, you've triggered something for me that I've never thought about. I think he really thought it was a no-brainer. That may well have been from the privilege and perspective of his career. I had fought really hard to be taken seriously in law, in a man's world, and utility sector, very dominant engineering. And I felt like I was giving up a lot.
Yeah.
But the flip side of it was I was giving up something that I knew wasn't really fulfilling me anymore. I'd kind of put a stake in the ground and said, I'm going to try and achieve this. And he just kind of put a big mirror in front and said, well, you came on contract with this company saying you wanted the ability to take paid board work. And here you are.
Right.
It was great to have that reflection back and that common sense.
Yeah.
Yes, you're young to do this, and that might seem risky. The flip side is you've got 15 years of law or 20 years of law if you want to come back to law. That's
right.
You've got that. And that was just a reminder, sometimes you do make decisions that I think now I've been out for 7 years. It probably would be challenging to say I wanted to go back into the practice of law. You'd have some ground to make up. He was absolutely right.
Yeah.
So it really goes to, I think, when you're thinking about your career too, is where do you have people in that can be that mirror, not only that champion and cheerleader, but also that frank, here's where you're at, and yes, that's a great direction, or no, that's probably not going to get you where you want to go. I've had a little bit of both in my career, and I think there's just really something to cultivating some of that feedback loop that isn't just, my husband says, sure, rah, rah. And my best friends, oh, well, yes, of course you can. And you just need that sober second thought sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's true. It reminds me of conversations I've been having recently as I kind of in this similar space as you, okay, yeah, I've built a great agency. Now you have this kind of age of AI and things are changing again. And okay, what's happening here? And I
Mhm.
watch, I watch Peter. So he's head first into AI and it's filling his cup like I haven't seen in a long time, actually probably since a executive MBA, which I feel like
Mhm.
he took after you took because he saw you kind of go through a transformation there
Yeah.
and he's there and I'm going like, okay, I guess things are running here. So what's next for me? And putting myself out there and what I would say is a different way. But as everyone talks to me, they go, no, this is kind of where we thought you'd evolve to. These conversations with people that I feel like both of us are connected with from that
Yeah.
time we first met
Yeah.
and going, okay, I'm putting this out here. I have this new shtick on I think I mentioned media training, and this is
Yeah.
how I come across it. Again, it's that old guy for more old guys. Don't listen to this episode. Right? And he's gonna stick a microphone in your face and I'm talking through it. I'm like, that's not how I approached it. It hasn't been how I've approached it for years.
That's
And
right.
I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna have this conversation. They're gonna tell me, you know what, that just doesn't fit. And all of a sudden you're having a conversation going, yeah, this is a really interesting perspective. And probably we do need to think about this as an organization or as a group of people. And you're like, oh, I guess I was onto something.
Well, you're really triggering me on something else that I would share that has been a learning for me is we tend to downplay the things that we think we're good at and we're sort of self-evident. So
Yeah,
you're going along thinking, well, this feels right to me,
right.
but because it doesn't fit in other people's model or it isn't hard, then we downplay it.
Yeah,
And what I found was, I mean, sitting in a legal career, part of what I trained my brain to do was be quite detail oriented. But what I am naturally that I downplayed for years is sort of a get to the end picture, see the big picture.
right,
I can describe it, I can motivate, I can create a mission, and I can build consensus. I know how to socialize something to get to a decision.
right,
And to me, I didn't really value that. First of all, in law, that wasn't necessarily the highest skill set sought. And secondly, because it was easy for me, I thought I needed to value and work at the things that were really challenging or really needed in this career that I'd ended up finding myself in. And then I look back and I go, everything I'm using now really more aligns with the things that I don't find that hard, but apparently other people really do because
right.
they really value it in me. And so it's this idea that I think I see it over and over again. We dismiss or downplay these visionary ideas that we have or these ways we see
Yeah,
of doing things because it doesn't fit the norm. Law was very much come in, tell us what our risks are, help us draft language or mitigate risks. We're not asking you for your perspective on the deal. We're not asking for how you see strategic alignment. We're not asking you to build the plan on how to get approval. And I'd go, well, that's kind of a mistake because I can see it. And that's when I realized I was doing that in boards. I was doing that really significant roles on really significant
cool.
organizations in Calgary. And I was having that impact. And here I was plain language drafting compliance certificates and going, I mean, what am I doing?
Right. Yeah.
So it was this value that I was placing on, well, this is what I get paid for. So, and this is within the confines of my job description. So this must be what's important. I think it's that step back to go, wait a minute, you might have a really innovative way of doing media training and approaching it that's much more aligned with the
Right.
whole communication regime that we're in these days. I mean,
Yeah.
all of the rules have changed on how we communicate, what tools we use to communicate. I mean, my goodness, the young people today are talking in a language that doesn't even make sense anymore.
Right.
And sticking microphones in people's faces doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? It isn't clearly getting the message across. There's lots of lessons learned literally as we speak about communications and crisis and building alignment to bigger ideas
Yeah.
that is going to take a very novel approach.
No, it's so interesting I think today it still has taken me a long time to learn those things that come naturally to you that are easy. Like that's a huge lesson right there. Like even as I've trained my team over the years and you go, to me, okay, organizing a project.
Yeah.
or project management, or to your point, kind of seeing the steps, knowing how to get, you go, okay, isn't
Doesn't
that
everybody
a thing?
do that? I mean,
Isn't
that's
that
so easy. That can't be valuable.
right? And my mom will make fun of me and she'll go, no, like remember how you used to organize your sock drawer when you were
Yeah.
young? Like that wasn't not all the kids were doing that. I mean, I know that
Why
now.
I like you. Why I like you.
I know that now because I look at my children's sock drawer and there's a
Yeah.
lot to be desired there. But like,
Yeah.
true, we don't realize that, to your point, there's always going to be that stuff at work that's harder, that feels a little bit more gritty. But
Yeah.
I don't know, finding that balance shouldn't be about, I'm going to do the hardest thing possible every single day, when maybe that
Or the
hardest,
only thing I'm going to focus on is the things I got to get better at instead of the things I'm really good at. That was a light
yeah,
bulb moment for me when I said, no, I'm going to really start developing the things that I already feel I'm good at and
yeah,
go to great, or go to amazing, than trying to force my brain and my work style into things where, I'm good or I'm okay,
right.
but I'm grinding to get to, above average and just dismissing all the things I was great at. And for me, that was the biggest realization. I literally have a day it clicked. I realized I was making two off the side of my desk decisions that were substantial for the organizations I was involved with. And what I was doing and getting paid to do was not meaningful in any
Yeah.
particular fashion. And I don't know why. Maybe for me, that was the first time in my life I heard a lot of reasons why I couldn't do something. And I thought they might be right about the barriers in front of me, but they're not right about why I shouldn't try to do this.
Right.
And I think I'd spent a lot of time in my life doing what, I ended up in a law career because, a lot of people, oh, you're persuasive, you should be a lawyer, like a lot of other
Right.
things. And then you just get into a raft of student loan debt and you have to work to pay it off and you have kids. And even my husband offered me when I was on mat leave with my first daughter, go back to do whatever you want. Like you don't have to. And I was like, yeah, but I can go back to law and do it with one eye closed and my hands tied behind my back
Right.
compared to starting over.
Yeah.
The courage to start over in your career when you have babies is it's full hats off to you, because I think I did it. I did it 5 years later when I finally realized, oh, I should have done it then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But better late than never.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've always thought you were spectacular in all you do, but I mean, just hearing the journey over the last little while and watching you, I mean,
Oh, thank you.
I'm a voting member way down the line. Remember seeing your name come up and going, of course.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and learning to manage and pivot my way even now. And then again, I think that balance to realizing that there's all these phases. You spend a lot of time in your career thinking about you're building your family and you're building some foundation of your house and some of your wealth, and you're trying to think about retirement as this far off plan. And I'm now 55 and my girls are off in university out of city, and all of a sudden you go, oh my goodness, like
Yeah.
we're on the verge, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, I don't know, but we're on the verge of kind of transitioning into a very different phase of life. And what is balance for that? And how are we prepared for that? And how do we balance it with my husband? And how do you balance it with your kids and them launching their lives? So I think that's my realization is that there really is no end point. It is all a journey, and
Yeah.
you're always just trying to make sure you can be the best version of yourself, whatever your current challenges are.
I love that. I feel like I'm going to start saying that to people. There is no end point when they say, where are you trying to be? What are you trying to, because it's true. I feel like,
Well, maybe it used to be. We all have, maybe my parents or whatever, that
yeah,
spent 35 or 40 years in a job in a company. We know that has changed dramatically, but I think even our ability not just to change companies, but to actually literally change
yeah,
career and change your mind. And Peter went back to school, and we think about what technology is doing, but what it's affording us is the opportunity to really be tooled up in a different way to really do something quite different.
totally. No, it is. We live in a crazy time.
For
Crazy.
sure. For sure. I don't know what's left after, artificial intelligence and quantum computing and all of the things that are going on, and trying to be engaged with it, and not like we met through politics, trying to be engaged and be part of
Right.
the solution, is what I want to model for my daughters, maybe more than anything.
Totally. One last question,
Okay.
bit of a twist, but we as women, I feel like live in a really interesting time aside from AI, but
Mhm.
the Barbie movie, you've got Taylor Swift, breaking every record. You have kind of this what seems to be very public conversations about women in the theme of our episode, the old guy, in the theme of kind of taking his place. Do you think that, is pop culture finally getting it right? Is it kind of a rainbow version? What are the things that maybe we need to tell our kids
Mm.
is accurate or not?
Oh boy, I think that pop culture, Barbie movies, some of these things are starting to shed light.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that they are entirely addressing, the structural challenges.
yeah,
I remember when there was the great debate back when Trump was running in 2016, and there was the discussion about women in the workplace and some of Me Too and the harassment. And he really sort of was part of really blowing, I think. I mean, I know it was Weinstein and some others, but he was part of it too when he said, well, my daughter would never put up that stuff. And you sort of realize, well, sure, when you're the daughter of a very powerful man. But the conversation started, and I was quite optimistic because I thought, this is great. Like
yeah,
we're exposing some light to it, and we're going to get some of this out, and we're going to make some real change. And I think part of the challenge is that we've accepted exposing the light of
right.
it as being sufficient to solve it. And I think my disappointment has been, I don't think it solves a darn thing. I think it's
Yeah,
like, well, we all know, okay, great. And the men are a little bit on their back heel a little bit sometimes, unfairly, maybe even, but we haven't really figured out how to address the structural barriers. And I know as a white woman, I'm like barely scratching the surface of the types of barriers that are there, economic barriers and racialized, and my goodness, what's happening in the world with international conflicts and how that's showing up in our own backyard. So I think that's the problem is that exposing it and talking about it isn't really enough.
yeah,
And virtue signaling it on it is just not enough.
yeah.
So no, I don't think it's solved anything, because I think it's almost given a false sense of comfort.
Almost the complacency around, oh, great, they talked about it.
Yeah.
And,
We
I'm,
had a movement, and I'm like, huh? And how much legislation has come forward that has positively empowered women with their bodies because of Me Too and workplace harassment and
yeah,
health issues, right? Or did it expose it and we actually went two steps back?
yeah, it's true.
I mean, I'm trying not to get political, but I think that's my challenge with it is I think it exposed it and I went, yay, we're finally talking about it. We're going to see some change. And my real sadness was, oh, we talked about it. And then it just all went back to the dark ages and some things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my, it's maybe not very uplifting. I should go, yay, it's all better now.
No, I think too, though, for me, it's just that continued elevating one another to continue down paths of leadership, right? So, I mean, what you're doing in terms of board governance, I think is huge, right? Having a female face on boards and even if that is helping towards transformational change just by having that there, but also the work you're doing. And I think the same with lots of the women I talk to. It's about, okay, we're the leaders.
Yeah.
And now we
Yeah.
have the ability to say, hey, yeah, we are moms, but we're also still pushing forward in our careers too. And we're not going to take any shit.
Well, I think there's three pieces to it. One is the role modeling we do not only for our own family and our own kids to see things different or just to not see the barriers. Two is absolutely recognizing that women need to do more of what I think men do naturally. I really admire men's both willingness to self-promote, but also to, help a buddy and to not be threatened by that. And three, just to be willing to be visible. It's really hard sometimes to feel like a token or feel like a first or feel like you're being held out as an example. It's not a comfortable place to be, but I get calls from women from across this country now who've realized that what I'm doing through various things And just taking the half an hour to hopefully help them just think about themselves a little differently and put themselves out there and value what they're doing a little differently. You just hope that you're helping just through being available and transparent and not hidden, which is
Totally.
the easiest thing I think to do sometimes, because it's not about arrogance or hubris. It's literally, if you see it, you can be it. I think that's so true. And then reaching back and making sure you pull somebody with you.
It's true. No, it's true. I mean, like you said, the guys are doing it.
I don't think they're doing it maliciously. I think they're just doing
No,
it. They
it's
don't
who
think
they
twice
are.
about, hey, I know a great guy who could be on
Yeah.
this, who could join this, or you should meet, or it's so comfortable and so natural for them, but they've never been taught to compete with each other in that manner. And I think we have to break through and really see it as when one wins, we all win.
Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
Welcome.
much.
You know, I've told you before, your kindness when I was being vulnerable to put myself out to volunteer for something, and you and Peter were so welcoming, and it made a big difference. You don't know the impact you make when you just are open and welcoming, and it made a big difference to me. So I thank you for that.
Amazing. Well, thank you, and thank you everyone for listening. Thanks for joining me, Christina Pilarski, for another fantastic episode of Two Babies in a Business. I hope that you'll follow along with me on my journey as a mom on Instagram, Two Babies in a Business. And I hope that you'll sign up for our newsletter. You can find the link in the show notes or on my Instagram. And finally, if you're a mom with a story to share, I want to hear from you. Please reach out to me, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you.